So why did I choose to create this project? I had this idea actually around a year ago. I was talking to my friend about how I made it, and he was like, "Oh, I remember you talking about that like a year ago." It doesn't really exist in any major capacity yet. The Nintendo design is something that I always find really cool, the way that they do their games. And I just thought it was a game that I would enjoy in VR, so other people would probably also enjoy it. I wanted to make it in a few ways. So I wanted to make a game that was fun every time you play. So it was still accessible to new people who were coming to it, but an experienced player could still jump in and have a good time without it feeling too monotonous or simple. I wanted it to be fast to restart, accessible, simple, and just pretty overall. So now I'm going to go into more of how I made it. So choosing an art style. To choose an art style, I just found different styles that I enjoyed, and then I just worked off that. So I really enjoyed this sort of 70s simple art style in things like the Stanley Parable and Valve's unreleased f-stop game, just like the office, orangey sort of environments. I was also playing around with a super dark black outline with gray or white shapes just to keep the simplicity there. But I ended up settling on this, which is a cel-shaded art style taken heavily inspired from the game Virtual Reality. If you haven't played it, it's super awesome. You should definitely play it. But the game looks absolutely gorgeous and it runs perfectly in VR. So I thought it would be perfect to adapt it. So now I'm going to go into the gameplay. The gameplay takes inspirations from WarioWare Smooth Moves, which came out for the Wii in 2006. That one had the motion controls, so it applies pretty well to VR. It also took inspiration from WarioWare Gold, which is the sort of general pack of all the WarioWare games that came out on the 3DS. And then a game that I played as a kid called Connect Adventures, which was for the 2010 Xbox Connect. So for the interaction, I wanted it to be satisfying, intuitive, with physics and one button. So the hands that you actually have in the game are rigid bodies that interpolate to the position of the controllers, so they're not where your actual controllers are. So this gives you a lot of feedback when you're pushing on things and touching things, and I think it feels really good. And so now I'm just going to go through quickly all the mini games and how I design the interactions for each of them. So for the dodge microgame, the player gets feedback in the form of visible motion, but still having the rails there so that they don't get motion sickness. And they get a whooshing sound when they pass each block to know that they've done a good thing. In the find microgame, you have your hand is actually replaced with a flashlight. So you don't have to worry about picking something up or dropping it or whatever. And the bug uses spatial audio, so you can hear where the bug is in the scene, and that helps you find it. And the bug exploding gives you good feedback that you've done good. The eat microgame, so this one actually has grabbing involved with it. So to do that, I tried to give some feedback with the hands grow when you click down the trigger, so then you know that your trigger's pressed and you're grabbing something. There's the eating sound and the particle effects that go along with it to let you know that you're doing a good job. You can't see the growing in this clip, that's just because this is an older clip. Then the Simon microgame, this one is just like a Simon Says sort of kid game where there's a pattern and then you repeat after it. So I saw a problem where if you just put 4 buttons in front of someone, someone's gonna press the 4 buttons, obviously. So the buttons had to start farther away from someone and move towards them while doing the pattern. So then they knew that they had to repeat what was being seen instead of just clicking randomly. So the buttons have sound particle effects and they're on spring joints. So they actually press down and it feels really good to push all the buttons. So the brush microgame. I had a unique problem with this one because people just didn't understand that they were inside of a mouth, which is kind of, I mean, it makes sense. You're not inside of a mouth every day. So I added a giant burger in front of you. And okay, this is actually pretty funny. So when I was playtesting people through this, none of them even like noticed the burger for some reason, like the giant burger in front of them. They would just not see it because they were so focused on doing other things. So I might have to find another way to communicate that you're inside of a mouth. But I did have some challenges. So originally, I was going to have another art style. Well, not originally. So like a month in, I was like, hey, it'd be really cool if I could scan clay stuff in photogrammetry and put that in the game and have it look sort of like stop motion. because I had used photogrammetry software in the past and it worked out pretty well. But it turned out that clay was just really not the thing to be photo scanning. This is the slab of clay here. Not good for photo scanning because it just doesn't have enough details in it to be accurately captured by the cameras. And I created my own sort of photogrammetry studio with an old Lazy Susan and a bunch of sheets. But yeah, it didn't end up working. But the cell shaded art style I still think looks pretty good and works well with the theme. But there are some things that went right. So I did all of the development publicly on Reddit, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I posted this clip with this caption to the Oculus subreddit and the Valve Index subreddit. In the Valve Index subreddit, I think it got 60 upvotes, and then here it got almost 100, and a ton of comments. I don't think I've ever responded to this many messages in such a short amount of time, but they have so many ideas for crazy microgames, and I didn't have time to implement any of them, but they were all really cool, and I'd love to implement them sometime. So now we're going to try and do a live demo here, if we still have time. Can you guys hear it? Okay. Here you can see the hands growing. Starts off pretty simple, but there's 3 different difficulties for all the minigames. And faster when you play. Yeah, that's probably good. Okay, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.